Our Prophet would spend day and night in ibadah and dhikr to our Creator. And our Creator describes Himself as Ar-Rahman. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's fundamental attribute, His primary attribute is Ar-Rahman. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوْ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ. Call upon Allah or call upon Ar-Rahman, indicating that Ar-Rahman, this attribute, is interchangeable even with Allah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ar-Rahmanu ala al-arsh istawa. When we look at this ayah, Allah could have used any of His names to describe Him descending upon the throne. Any of the names could have been used, but it was Ar-Rahman. And Rasulullah spends every waking moment in contemplation, in connection, in worship of Ar-Rahman. And this gives us a couple of things to reflect on. One, who is it that we are spending most of our time with? Do we have a fraction of that connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Do we even have a little bit of it? Who is rubbing off on us? It's so important to see in your own behavior. Who is it that rubs off on you? Who is it that you're learning from? Which attributes are you acquiring from the friends around you, from what you're listening to and engaging with and connecting with regularly? And Rasulullah did this with our Creator, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it's so important to know that that relationship is something that we want to adopt a fraction of it. We want to adopt some of it. We want to learn from that. But we also want to look at some specific examples of what does this rahmah look like when it's manifested in the life of our beloved Prophet Muhammad. But I've mentioned so many instances, including in the most tense of times, including in the most difficult of times. His rahmah would manifest even when you don't expect it. In the middle of battles and wars, when they were being oppressed, when they were under threat, Rasulullah's rahmah was manifest. There's a story from the Battle of Badr, where Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was forming the lines of the Sahaba, preparing them for what they were facing. Now imagine in this scenario, this is a tense situation. They were outnumbered. The other side had more weapons, more horses, more everything. And it looked like total annihilation for the entire Muslim Ummah. In that instant, every major Sahabi was there. So the stress, if you will say, the anxiety, the pressure of the moment was there. And Rasulullah is filing his ranks, preparing them for what they're about to face, organizing them like any general might do. And one of the Sahaba, Rasulullah used his stick to push him back and line up within the line. You know what this Sahabi said in this moment? He said, Ya Rasulullah, you hurt me. And you came with truth and justice, and I demand justice. Can you imagine, in any other scenario, or any other leader, who is justified in their actions, justified in filing ranks, saying, I'm not doing anything, they're not doing anything wrong, the Prophet is not doing anything out of the ordinary or wrong. What was the response of the typical individual that we see now, modern or classical? What can you imagine? Retribution, condemnation, humiliation, shouting, discipline. What Rasulullah did was this. He dropped his stick, he lifted his shirt, and he said, here, take the stick and hit me back. And this is your justice. Allahu Akbar. Can you imagine that kind of all-encompassing, holistic compassion and leadership in that moment? They're about to be annihilated, and he's still considering the feelings of somebody. He's still in consideration of how these people feel. For anybody in a place of authority, whether you're in an office or you're in a grocery store, or you're in your own home with your family members and your children, you're probably right. You probably feel like you have righteous indignation. and you need to hold a tight ship. There was no tighter ship that was held than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. There is no better leader or better example on this planet than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't know better than him. We're learning from him. We want to know about these khutbah. This Sahabi, when he saw this, instead of doing that, he hugged Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He told him, Ya Rasulullah, I did not know if we would live or die in this, and I wanted one last chance to embrace you. And so he hugged Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam instead of doing it. It's that compassion that breeds brotherhood. It's that compassion that breeds unity. It is that compassion that breeds victory. We will never be successful unless we truly love each other and have compassion for each other, especially for those who are weakest in our community. Many of us observe our iman individually, but rahmah is an expression that is outward. It's something that other people need to experience. They need to see you as somebody who has rahmah. And in a very famous hadith that maybe many of you know, Rasulullah says, Ar-Rahimuna yarhamuhum ar-Rahman, irhamu man fil ardi, yarhamukum man fil sama. Those who are ar-Rahimun, those of rahmah, if they have rahmah of those upon the earth, the Rahman above the heaven will have rahmah on them. It sounds transactional. It sounds that our actions, there are repercussions to them. The way that we engage with the community is important, and Allah Azza wa Jal is watching how we interact with people. Allah Azza wa Jal is watching what other people feel when we interact with them, what they come away with. What feelings are people left after you engage with them? And more importantly, what are those whose lives have been devastated? What are they leaving with? We prepare ourselves for conversations, meetings with higher ups and authority, and we have the best behavior with them, and we have a smile on our face all the time. But the people who are weak, do we have the same level of compassion towards them? There is another story where there was a tribe that was traveling into Medina. And this tribe came into the Masjid al-Nabawi, disheveled and torn apart. Their clothes were torn. They looked dirty. They looked malnourished and sick. They had their swords dangling from their necks from the trip, completely exhausted and nearing death is what it looked like. And the hadith describes that when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam saw them, it says that his face changed. His face changed when he saw them. And then he called Bilal ibn Rabah. He says, call adhan and gather everybody. And so Bilal goes and calls adhan and gathers these people. And Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam delivers a sermon on the spot. And he tells everybody there the importance of supporting those who are less fortunate, of being there for people who are less fortunate. The Sahaba would gather, would unify, and they would start delivering aid. They would start supporting, and some of the descriptions is they could hardly carry what they could. They couldn't even lift some of the things they wanted to bring to this tribe in need. And the end of the hadith is that it describes Rasulullah having smiles, and there was joy on his face. You see, there is an example here in this story that there is empathy and compassion that is active. And there is empathy and compassion that wounds you but doesn't produce any activity. For those of us who've been awake and not living under a rock, we've witnessed some of the worst atrocities against our ummah over the last 2 years. In Gaza, there are 36 hospitals. Every single hospital was attacked. A 12-year-old girl by the name of Dua, her leg was blown off. She did an interview with the media. 2 days later, in her hospital bedroom, a tank shell kills her. In her hospital. In her room in the hospital. This is what we witnessed. I'm going to be honest with everybody. Our hearts have been injured. My heart has injured and you're scarred, and the next step, the next thing that we do is we turn it off and we try to find our own balance and situate and recover. I think that's what the vast majority of us are doing. That we are able to turn something off. Our brothers and sisters in Gaza are incapable of turning this off and are powerless. And it's the people who are powerless that we need to be concerned about with our compassion. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who will never neglect those who need us and will never forget, despite how much they want to cover any story or any atrocity, that we will never forget or neglect them. Inshallah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه أما بعد. My dear brothers and sisters in Islam, Allah Azza wa Jal has delivered to us a prophet with compassion, and He delivered us a prophet that gave us an example of active empathy and compassion. One that moves and mobilizes us. One that does not leave our limbs dormant. One that it feels the pain, and it makes the dua, and it creates the intention to move. That is the activity we saw in that hadith. And after that activity, we feel joy if we see the relief. We can feel the pain with people, but we feel joy in the victory and relief as well. Because we are connected. There's no way that anybody can claim we are disconnected from people who have La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah on their tongue and in their hearts. It's happening to us. There is no distance, no matter how far, that we would say that that's not happening to us. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has also delivered to us a prophet who has given us gems of sayings and ones that we're supposed to live by. Ones like خَيْرُكُمْ أَنْفَعُكُمْ لِلنَّاسِ. The best amongst you, the best, are the ones who are of benefit to people. I'm saying this because I know sometimes for many people it's hard enough to take care of ourselves. It's difficult enough to take care of our own selves and make sure that our iman is intact, that we're able to just keep our heads above water. And I know the struggle in that, especially here. But we cannot neglect the fact that we are being monitored. Our actions, our behavior, our attitudes towards others are being monitored. And Allah Azza wa Jal is testing us with every atrocity we see and how we interact with it. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us amongst those who can recognize these things and be people of benefit. To be people who are useful towards others. We have to make sure that we can do that. I've mentioned just a couple of issues of Khutba, and there are many numerous atrocities around the world. When we see that 90% of the infrastructure is leveled and destroyed, I know that it feels hopeless. I know it's like we don't know what to do. And so I'm asking you, inshallah, to not let this story die. Because right now what we're seeing is a slow burn. Right now we're seeing an intentional cover-up of stories. But the stories have not stopped, and we are very concerned about issues repeating themselves. In your own mind, be strategic as well. The Muslim community is the most generous community. But we give when our emotions are high. We don't give strategically. We don't think, what did I do this month for Allah? What did I do this month for Palestine on this issue? Am I caught up on the issues? And I'm here to give you that as a reminder, as a representative from Kama. I'm not here to fundraise or anything, but just as a reminder, because I feel like we are at a critical situation where we need to maintain the same level of compassion and intensity that we're obligated to have within our character and our actions. Allahumma hdina fi man hadayt, wa'afina fi man afayt, وتولنا فيمن توليت, وبارك لنا فيما أعطيت, وقنا واصرف عنا شر ما قضيت.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
استقيموا. Straighten your line. الله أكبر. رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
So I just start over. I'd like to thank our brother Abdullah Fadi for coming out with Khutba and reminder that we all need to always remain compassion and have rahmah in our hearts. It's very easy to get caught up with what he was saying, and the Muslims, unfortunately, all around the world are still suffering from atrocities. You might think that we're telling Gaza is over. It's not over, unfortunately. There's still a lot of atrocities being committed, and then the need there is so huge with all the infrastructure gone and the winter coming in. And all we don't hear as much about Sudan, but what's happening in Sudan and the whole Ummah. So please keep them in your dua, in your prayers, and in your donations. There's a lot of good organizations out there that we can donate to. While I'm on the talk about donations, as you all know, we bought the building next door. We have the pledge forms and we do formal fundraising. Inshallah, the pledge forms are everywhere for anybody that would like to pledge. We make donations, inshallah, towards the building next door, and also our daily operations. As you know, we have boxes everywhere for that. There's not much really in the way of other announcements for this week. They always like to remind everybody and myself, we do hold all 5 daily prayers here. So please, those of you that live downtown or in the area, please remember that our doors are always open for all prayers, not just for Friday. This is your message, so please always make sure to come here and do all 5 daily prayers. Jazakumullah khair.